I'm in that awkward hair. All right. We are live. Hey, y'all. This is Sharmane from Gulf Coast Cosmos, and this is our first in person comics and flicks since we started it. I am not joined by my co owner, Byron Kennedy. He is off today, but I am joined by our, it's kind of patient zero, our customer zero, our first customer we ever had, our first Patreon sponsor, our bodega cat, Crimson Jordan.
Hello. Nice
And
to be with y'all today.
and we are going to be talking about characters from the Milestone universe ahead of the, I guess, live premiere of the hardware movie that is going to be streaming on YouTube later on today. So, you want to get into it?
Absolutely. So, what's really wonderful about Milestone this year is that DC's come out with a Milestone like resurgence.
Resurgent,
So
returning, yeah.
bringing back all of these characters that have kind of been put in the closet for a little while, on a shelf,
Put on a shelf for a little while.
and now are being dusted off so everybody can see how cool they are.
And here at the shop, we do sell the books that are associated with the Milestone universe. And yes, here's one. And people have been coming in because they remember Static from the cartoon from the early 2000s, the late 90s.
Yep, early 2000s.
And things like that. So we're getting people who remembered it, and then now we're getting new people that are like, hey, there's new characters for us to learn about. So it's a fun time to also find out that there's fans out there that have made this really high quality fan movie. I assume.
Yeah, and it's so cool because apparently this guy's been doing it for like a while with character by character, and I've seen like fan trailers and stuff like that, and I didn't realize how big this actually
serious,
is.
Yeah.
And so I've been so excited all year just telling people about this because I've known about Milestone for a while now.
Okay.
And so I first found out about Milestone through Robert Kirkman's History of Comics. And it's a series about the origins of a lot of different heroes, a lot of different universes, and a lot of different issues. And one of them, the episode's called The Color of Comics.
Okay.
And it is about Milestone's formation, its dissolvement, if you will, and its impact.
Okay.
And it's pretty dope. So
I've totally missed that, but I'll check that one out.
It is really cool. And so yeah, I grew up on Static Shock, right? And so everybody's like, Static Shock, like cool. I was like, well, actually, it's just Static. But and you know what? If you like Static, you're gonna love like all of the different things that are part of the Dakotaverse. So this all takes place in a city called Dakota.
Okay.
That is not in the state Dakota.
Okay.
It is a fictional place.
And it's not Metropolis.
Nope.
And it's not Gotham.
Nope.
It's its own place.
But it's close enough to Gotham.
Close enough to Gotham. Okay.
For
Batman to show up randomly on occasion.
Yeah, for Batman to show up, or for Batman and Static to do like a little crossover.
Okay.
So Milestone started because there was a need, or there was an observation. So you have these dudes who grew up liking comics, but like we're reading like Luke Cage, where it's like Sweet Christmas, and like
that'll be a discussion on another
jive turkeys, committing crimes in my neighborhood. So they grew up with that, and they were like, this isn't really me,
right?
Like I've never heard anybody call anyone a drive turkey on my block.
There's some representation that is not representative.
Like, oh, he looks like me, and I like him because he looks like me. I love Black Panther, but I'll never know what it's like to be the prince of a technologically advanced city in Africa. And I love Luke Cage being a bulletproof black man, but I'll never
say Sweet Christmas.
And so these four dudes, Dwayne McDuffie, the late great Dwayne McDuffie, one of the most amazing writers in comic history. Dennis Cowan, amazing artist, Michael Davis, and Derek T. Dingle got together and formed Milestone Media. And one of the things that Milestone Media produced was Milestone Comics. Now, this is 93. This is not a big time where like indie comics are just coming out left and right with a lot of power, right?
You were mostly a Marvel or a DC fan. and you're on the brink of the
Image.
blow up of Image and everything with them, which is I'm a teenager for that time, so I remember when that happened.
All right, so yeah, exactly. So this is that time, right?
Yeah.
And so the guys at this point have separately, like, one of them was a businessman at the time, so he had the know-how. One of the dudes had been Dennis Cowan had been doing art and comics, but had hit some snags because this is again like, oh, we're not really looking for diversity hires,
Right.
kind of thing.
And this was a time when not many black and brown artists were able to be in the industry because they literally didn't think
It
you
was
could draw
possible.
anything but people who look like you.
I think at some point, one of them, I think it was Cowan, was told by one of the big ones that, oh, we already have a black artist.
Yeah.
So just wasn't like a open door opportunity, and they were
Right.
like, we need to create our own. So they put together this, and to this day, people who worked in the industry had said we had never seen anybody come up with like this much comprehensive material as they did walking into that meeting. They went down, they slapped down this big old book, and it was the Milestone Bible. I've been looking for it, I can't find it anywhere. It's like the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And
so it exists
like,
out there in the world
it
somewhere.
exists somewhere.
Okay, we're gonna have to find it.
And it's like all of the characters, all of the, I mean, just maps of Dakota, the city, like history,
Nice.
all the background behind all these characters, hundreds and hundreds of pages of it, just like a Tolkien level of like background.
That's awesome.
And it's amazing, and it's just all these black and brown faces, and all of these diverse stories. And it came out of the need of all four of these dudes going, there's not enough diversity in comics.
Right.
There's not enough representation. And what's cool about this is that while Milestone starts as like four black dudes going, we need to change comics, they decide we're not just going to change comics for us, we're going to change comics for everybody. Because Milestone Media is more than just black comics. You've got black characters, Hispanic characters, Asian characters, transgender characters, gay characters, everything. They touch on everything.
Nice.
One of the biggest comics they have is narrated entirely by a black teenage girl, which is like, you talk about somebody who has a lot to say but never has the opportunity to say anything. You think about a black teenage girl, and to give her a voice and to give her an entire title where she gets to tell the story, it's amazing.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. And so that's Milestone. Milestone starts with that.
Okay.
There's a problem, we're gonna fix it by telling stories.
Right.
And so you've got a lot of titles that come out of that. You've got Hardware, which the movie that is coming out later tonight.
Right.
You've got Icon and Rocket. You've got Static.
Oh, our posters are there. You can't see them, but we got posters of them over there. We got Icon and Rocket. We got Static over here. Milestone Returns and Hardware. We got them.
And yeah. And so you got Static. You got Zombie. You got the Blood Syndicate. And so you've got all these different like characters, these universes, of course, have their own villains and problems and all these different things. And then you've got the different events that kind of cross over. And what's really like great about this is that it's just already so rich before they even start making the books.
Right. So they've created the history, they've created the backstory, they've built the world, and no one has seen a page yet.
And it's just this thick book, and they go into DC's office and they're like, what do you think of that? Exactly.
I would love to be there for that. I just never think about that.
And DC right now is scrambling because right now comics are a little weird.
Dipping, right?
This is right before the big boom of Image. Some of the artists and authors are like, "Ooh, we're not really getting treated well."
There's the I don't want to call it like a strike, but it has to do with wages. There was people that are just finally realizing, I'm talented, I could get paid for this kind of stuff.
I wrote this and I'll never be able to own it.
I've never been able to own it. Yeah. So we're about to either destroy comics forever, or something needs to change, and
Yeah.
that's what we're at in between 93 and 96. All
And
right.
so they go, here's what we want to do. And DC goes, we'll give you the money to do it. Give you the building, we'll pay your bills, we will publish everything for you. And we will not have creative control.
Okay. And you retain the rights?
You retain the rights to
Okay.
this. This is a publishing deal. We
Okay.
publish your work, and the only thing that we will have say on is whether or not we will publish it. If we decide we don't want to publish it, we don't have to publish it.
So does that mean that they would still pay the bills, but they would lock up the stories so that it couldn't get out?
It would be like,
That's risky.
yeah, it. So at the time though, this is like it's still a good deal
Right.
because it's a big company producing or letting this own company exist underneath it,
Mm-hmm.
and like put out all these books. You have the promotional material. Of course, you're not going to get as much.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get as much as
Still.
Catwoman or Superman or whatever that's really big at the time because Black Company, Black Heroes,
Right.
not going to get as much. But we're gonna treat you like one of our own here. You're
Okay.
gonna have our stuff, but if you decide that you want to put out something we disagree with, that we don't want to put out there, we do have the right to say no.
Okay.
And this foreshadowing becomes the problem later.
Shocker.
But in the meantime, you kind of have this, I mean, like a black storytelling renaissance of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Icon and Rocket, who are this like, you've got the Superman archetype here, the alien from another world
Mm-hmm.
comes to Earth, and upon the first person that sees the crash becomes the most vulnerable, most amenable thing in its presence. So a black slave approaches this alien spaceship,
Mm-hmm.
and he turns into a black baby.
Yeah, so that's a story about him, that he mimics whatever the existing life. So if any life form had showed up,
That would be.
he would have mimicked that life form.
Mm-hmm.
He just happened to encounter a black enslaved woman.
Mm-hmm. And so, because it's one of those things with, she wouldn't harm a baby,
Right.
you know. And so he was raised as one of their own. He's raised by a slave,
Mm-hmm.
and he lives for like a couple hundred years. He encounters people that realize how powerful he is and goes, why don't you change the world? And he has these opportunities in which he probably has opportunity. Like, where was he
Mm.
for these 200
I mean,
years?
that's a question for deities. That's a comic book characters. It's a big question.
Yeah. And so and so you have that with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got these like couple hundred years later where he meets this black teenager who she just ends up being in the wrong crowd, right? She's a really smart girl. These dudes who were like, of course, giving into each other's peer pressure. Let's go rob these white people in this like fancy neighborhood, not realizing that there might be black people that are just as wealthy that are
Mhm.
also living there,
Mhm.
right? And she's like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do this. And they're like, don't you want to be like Toni Morrison? Don't you want to have your own typewriter? Like, maybe there's a typewriter in there. We can make that happen. We can get you a typewriter. And like, I guess girl was ready to do anything for a typewriter and
Okay.
decides to rob this place with them. And of course, they encounter this large black man who's like, why are you in my house? They shoot him. He doesn't bleed. And they escape. They leave. And basically, Raquel, the character, she goes, he can be a superhero. And she finds him. She tracks him down in the age of, I mean, this isn't really like the age of the internet per se. This is 93, but she's able to find him, and she's able to go, hey, you have powers somehow. Like, you should change the world. Like, you see these drug dealers, you see this, you see that. Why aren't you fixing things?
Right.
And he goes, nah, no thanks. And she's like, but, and also, I don't know why I didn't, he's a Republican.
Okay.
And he's a lawyer. And it's very interesting. You don't really think that
I
this,
like roughly know. I've read just a little bit of it. And it's been ages, so I kind of vaguely know about him being super conservative and it being a struggle to get him to save people. But
Mhm.
I didn't recall it until you said.
Yeah,
So
because he's one of those why don't you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps
bootstraps, yeah.
kind of people, and eventually she gets him to do it. And so there's one of the big things. The first thing they do as a superhero duo is linked to one of um, the Big Bang, which I'll get to in a minute. It's a big thing that kind of brings all these universes together.
Okay.
And there's this emergency happening. Rocket, the teenage girl, she's like, let's like save the day.
Mhm.
And he's like, oh, but there are cops here. Let's go talk to them first. She's like, that's not a good idea. He's like, nonsense. Like they're here to protect and serve. Let's go talk to them. And they all turn their guns on him. And then my favorite part of that comic is that last panel where she goes, I bet Superman doesn't have to go through this. And that's it. That's how that comic ends. And you're just like, oh, okay.
So in terms of the Milestone universe, is this the first thing to happen, or is this?
Is this the first run? Honestly, I think. I'm not sure. I know that Static isn't the first. I think it is Icon and Rocket,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's Hardware. Ooh, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't remember which order it goes in, but I do know that Static isn't actually the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would expect that because he's the more popular character.
But he's a popular character because he was a teenager, right?
He's a teenager. He was given a resurgence in the early 2000s.
And we like our teenage heroes because we relate to them, because most of us are entering reading comics, if not as children, then at least as teenagers.
Yep, he's got this Spidey archetype to him. He's
Yeah.
witty, he's smart, he's got life problems like we all do, and he's
Yeah.
a teenager who likes to annoy his sister. It's relatable.
He's relatable, yeah.
And if you pay attention to it's like in the first season of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, in Will's pool house apartment, there's a poster of Static #1 in his room.
I don't know.
And there are a lot of people who were really big fans of Milestone at the time who didn't realize that years later you wouldn't be able to find Static #1 for under $50 or something like that. You know,
you can find a trade of Icon somewhat easily.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only thing that I ever really saw at the comic shop that I used to go to in LA.
Yeah, I've been tracking down T-shirts and promotional material. It's really hard to find. But it was this thing of like, oh, good for them. They're telling good stories, not realizing how big it was going to be. They sold more titles than any black indie comic at the time. And they had DC backing them, so that was a sweet deal. They were selling, they were doing really well.
So we know that Static ends up getting a cartoon and things like that, and that's how he continued to have more of a following than maybe Icon or anything like that. But let's get to, oh no, where did they go?
All right, so
because we did start a little bit late. Sorry, everybody. We started a little bit late because we had some technical difficulties. But
and before we get to the where did they go, I'll touch on Hardware real quick.
Yeah, let's talk about Hardware. And then, okay.
His movie's coming out. So Hardware, it's Curtis Metcalf. It is this typical like smart black kid in the hood, gets an opportunity from one of these companies, and so he gets to go through this program that's kind of like, I don't know, it's the STEM program of its time.
Okay.
And one of the bigger suits of Dakota, Edwin Alba, sees him and is like, I can what's the word when you extort, I can extort this black child's talent. And so he like basically funds for like all 8 of his degrees or whatever, and he like funds anything that he needs. He takes care of him his entire life, to the point to where Curtis feels like he's a mentor, like a father figure. He gets him his first job. He says, hey, you have a lab, you have all these resources, you can do whatever you want, you can make this X amount of money, you can just do whatever you want.
But I own it. I wonder what the inspiration for that was. DC. I'm so curious.
And so you have this thing where this kid was given a chance. He's a genius. He is the Tony Stark of this universe. Which I don't. He's better than Tony Stark. in a lot of ways. But he also has this like he's one of those heroes that is not afraid to just
He'll do the work.
he'll do the work. And so essentially what creates his origin story is he's this genius who's making all these. I mean, he's like, I'm making some stuff that's really important. I'm gonna go talk to my father figure, my mentor, and tell him like, hey, I think it's time that like I make a little bit more money. I have a little bit more ownership of my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm obviously being groomed to be second in command or something like that, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
to lead this company. And basically, Edwin goes, this is insulting. Like you're more like my dog, you know. You're more like a family pet than like a son to me.
Mm.
You know, like don't come at me with that again. Like you get to keep everything, all the benefits, everything you could possibly want, but we're not. Don't think we're on the same level because we're not.
Wow.
And so now he's like, I need to get out of this.
Yeah.
So he's like looking for dirt that he can dig up on this guy to like get out of the situation, and he realizes that this guy's bigger than he thought. This dude has ties to the criminal and like the criminal industry going on, all that criminal underground and all that. This dude has ties to everything. That's why he has so much money. He's in everything.
He's in it.
He knows all these dirty little
He
secrets.
probably has military contracts and all that other kind of stuff.
Exactly. So he's realizing not only is his boss slash whatever like the bad guy, but he's probably been creating stuff that's being used for destruction.
Yeah.
So, and you can see how that translates into the new milestone runs that you can pick up here, Gulf Coast Cosmos.
Nice book.
Yeah, no problem. You can get hardware number 1. You can get static. You can get, and it all ties in together. And that's the beautiful thing about Milestone is all of these tie in together.
Mm-hmm.
So he decides to take matters into his own hands, use all of these free resources that he gets, and become hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big thing within all of the different Milestone comics is the Big Bang, where a bunch of these gang members and black teenagers and you know the teenagers of that community are lured into this park for this meeting, and then are bombed with this gas,
which is pretty much coming out of real life history.
Exactly. And so they mutate into, that's what gives Static his powers. It's what gives the Blood Syndicate their powers and appearances. This is where a lot of the different events in the Milestone universe kick off, and that's what everything kind of revolves around. So anyway, rich history, so much stuff going on.
So Icon is powered because he comes from a different planet. Does Rocket get powers from the Big Bang also?
No, she gets powers from alien technology from Icon. Yeah. So she gets powers from alien technology from Icon. Static and Rocket, I think, like date a little bit later on in the. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but Static gets his powers from there. His villain, Hot Streak, also gets his powers from there. The Blood Syndicate, all of them get their powers from that because they're gang members. So that's all, and there's so many different characters. We couldn't even get into all of the characters that this universe has because it definitely matches up against some of the bigger universes.
Okay.
And they do have DC Milestone crossovers and all that happen, like Superboy and Rocket hanging out. They both have the same style. It kind of works.
Yeah.
So it runs well. People are picking up the comics, they're reading them. And then Dwayne decides to make this Static issue where him and his girlfriend making out on the couch. There's no nudity. You've seen more nudity on a Catwoman cover. But there are condoms on the table.
Clutch my pearls.
So DC goes, we're not putting this on a newsstand. We're not selling this. And Dwayne goes, like, why not? Like, right behind you, you have like Catwoman with her butt facing the camera, like turning around like this, like, yeah. And they're like, you know, this is like overtly sexual. And it's like these are two teenagers, not even doing they're just kissing. And, you know, we're being responsible by having this here.
Yeah.
So there's a...
back and forth.
And they go do something about it because we're not putting this out. And so they mat it in a little hard. So
you can't see
You can't see anything except for them kissing.
Okay.
I have that comic. And this is what starts the tensions between DC and Milestone.
Okay.
Because at the very end, in the like editorial section, Dwayne kind of insinuates that, like, this is racist. And DC goes, we're not racist. This is insulting. bills stop getting paid.
Mm.
It becomes a little tense. Communication isn't as easy to have, and so things become a little rough. And the sad thing about this is it doesn't just affect Dwayne. It doesn't affect the other three founders. At this point, Milestone's created so many different jobs, kickstarted so many different
Yeah.
careers for um, like black, white, Asian, Hispanic artists, writers, creators, doing all these wonderful things. So it doesn't just affect them; it affects everyone, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really immature back and forth that happened that spurred the end.
Yeah.
And so after a while, it just that was kind of like the slowing momentum that led to not as many sales, not as much interest, the dissolvement of
Right.
Milestone Media. And so it's not like DC hasn't cashed in on Milestone, because every now and then you'll see Icon and Rocket and Young Justice. You'll see their like kind of like what's the word, like consolation, like, hey, here, make a show about Static, Dwayne. Like Dwayne, still wrote with DC and did some amazing work.
Okay.
Animated universe wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for him. And if he were alive, the live action movies might be a whole lot better as well. Um, and so that's kind of what happened, is just kind of like, I guess, all things that are spearheaded by people who have been disenfranchised before. It's the corporate upper hand is gonna kill them every time.
Yeah.
And so what I like is that they're getting a second, and not a second chance, but they're getting the respect they deserve this time around, or we're seeing that now.
And was this, so I don't actually know about the deal, is this DC's apology and bringing them back because now it's okay to have brown characters?
I mean, I won't even say that it's an apology. More so as they just kind of pretend like nothing ever happened. So it was more of a business gone bad kind of thing. We're not going to talk about the tensions there.
Yeah. But we need
Um,
black and brown characters.
right, but people have been asking for Milestone to come back for over 20 years
Mm.
now. Like, it's time. It was time 10 years ago, and they've been hinting at it. They hinted at it 10 years ago, and now it's finally time to do it. And yeah, I guess this is the time and era in which this would be very lucrative to do so.
Right.
But yeah, and so Milestone, as you can see on the comics, their logo is there because it's their stuff.
It's their stuff.
It's their stuff. But DC's logo is also there as well. And that's why I don't like when people go DC Comics hardware. I will always say Milestone.
Yeah. That's actually important, just as a little side note in terms of the imprint of any of these books, is that, the imprint could be the big corporation that helps get the book out. But the important one is the creator, paying attention to the creator, especially if it's a somewhat indie slash owned by or taken care of by one of the majors. That happens all the time. So you have to pay attention to that too, because that also helps continue to get the brown people jobs after they leave whatever the book is that they're working on.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this new run, is that these are black artists, black writers, or people of color that are writing,
Creating their own stories.
and creating their own stories. And it's so real. Like the dialogue and the story, is very real. We're like, I was reading one of study number 2 with my friend, and he's like, a black woman must have wrote this. Like, there's nobody else who could write it like this.
Yeah.
And we look back at the writer, and like, yeah.
There's a moment like that in Far Sector too, where it's like, oh, that word that is in that panel would not be said because a white person would never know to say it.
In fact, I think it's a black non-binary person that's writing Static too.
For Static, right? That's great. No, that's good.
But yeah, so it's wonderful, and that's what I love, is that you're seeing, and this is all sparked. So instead of the Big Bang this time around, it's a Black Lives Matter protest. The gas is used there.
Oh, okay.
And that's what kicks off the powers in this one.
Okay.
And
so it's a total reboot.
It's a total reboot.
Okay.
And they're using a lot from the originals, a lot of source material. They're staying mostly true to it, but it's definitely
modernizing. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Why don't we talk a little bit about what hardware does?
So hardware is this anti-corruption agent of sorts. Like, he is I see something happening that I don't like. Punisher meets Iron Man.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. And so he's got this secret lab where he like has all of his free tech that he got from work. You know, we all do that. We all take things from work and then use them for our personal means. I don't fight crime, but you know, he does. So you know, he steps
Well,
into
also he
this
kind
like
of created a lot of the stuff that he uses. So I mean, is it
yeah.
taking it if he created it?
Right, you good point, good point. You know, and so like he strips down his skeevies. He steps into this machine that puts on this skin tight black exoskeleton. And then this armor gets put over him. He has like these repulsor rays and stuff. And he can fly with his like jetpack. He's just cool. He's just cool. He's got like this billionaire playboy vibe to him, right? He's got this like really good looking, always slick with the he can have something right back at you when you say it. And he stays strapped when he's not in uniform too.
Okay.
He's got like a watch that works as like this mega taser.
Okay.
You know, like he's always prepared. He's one of those characters that doesn't always make the heroic decision, but he does what he feels is necessary. So it's going to be interesting looking at this because I mean, like him in contrast with Icon, they're two different heroes. But he's a character that you can really get behind because sometimes you're mad and you're like, "No, I get it. I get it. I get it."
I mean, I think one of our complaints as a whole community right now is that Batman is problematic because he doesn't take out his biggest enemy. His biggest enemy continues to kill, or any enemy. His they continue to kill people. At what point does those deaths become on your shoulder?
Mhm.
And so I'm of the delegation of people who say sometimes you got to do good dirt when you're a good guy.
Mhm.
So maybe that happens a little bit. Sometimes you got to do a little bit
Sometimes
of
you
dirt
gotta. Sometimes you gotta do it. I mean,
if
yeah,
it saves the day.
gotta crack a few eggs, and so you get and because this is the one that's out now, um, and the Milestone returns issue 0 and in static right now,
Mm-hmm.
you start to see how Curtis fits in everything.
Okay.
So when that gas is sprayed at that Black Lives Matter protest, just like a lot of things with black successful people, they used his chemical agent without permission before it was tested on these innocent kids,
Mm.
and now he's going to go down for it.
Mm.
And so, and just like his story in the '90s, this is just a repeat of people being exploited by the corporate upper hand, so that they can get put, out of the hot water, and somebody else can take the fall.
Okay.
So he kind of represents everybody who's ever been done dirty by their employer or the person who is supposedly taking care of them, using them for what they could get out of them,
Right.
and then discarding them. But he's a fun character. He's a really fun character. And all of his comic covers, he just like if you can grab that variant right there, all of his comic covers kind of like he's mad. He's like, or he's ready to whoop some butt, and he's got every intention of doing so. And he's just one of those characters where like it's just straight action. He's ready to get down to it. It's not the I'm gonna think about this and do something. It's the I'm gonna go do something. And that's just kind of character that he is. He's really cool in that way.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for explaining it to the audience for Comics and Flix Day. Stay tuned to our social media so you can get the links to how to view hardware. Hopefully, we can get that up here for y'all shortly, and participate in the live stream while it's happening. I don't actually know if it's going to stream after their live stream today, but hopefully it will, and we'll put any information that we get on that on our Facebook page and our Twitter so that you can check it out. But thank you, Crimson, for explaining
Oh yeah,
the Milestone universe
I'm
to us.
really looking forward to seeing this movie.
Me too. All right. And we will be here at the 2320 Elgin Street location here in the third ward of Houston on Friday. Well, today's Friday, but Saturday and Sunday. Saturday is free comic book day. We will be here from 10 a.m. to 7. And there will be one free comic per person who comes in. And then on Sunday, we are celebrating our first anniversary at Gulf Coast Cosmos.
Yay!
So we'll be here celebrating and probably giving out whatever free comics we might still have. We'll see. All right. See y'all.